Hello and welcome, all ancient and justified masters. This is episode 7 of Intro into Magic, where we will discuss many things, but mostly focused on magical alphabets and ritual tools. I'm your host, Justin B. So, time for a little bit of a review. So far, we've learned how awareness influences the subtle force, causing change to occur in accordance to the imagination and will working together. We have learned the imagination gives desire form, a form that corresponds to the elemental vibration or the sensation experienced of the desire based on its essential qualities. Magic uses symbolism and the power of correspondence by creating symbols that draw together a greater quantity of the desired quality represented by the symbol within the subtle force. This causes the desired result by the symbols to either banish or draw forth qualities that are desired or antithetical. So, certain images banish certain qualities in the subtle force, and other symbols draw forth those qualities. Symbols are active, potent, living things on the astral, and their influence on reality cannot be denied. Language and symbols, magic have a very long history together. Some say it goes back to the gods, giving us writing and magic with it. Both Hermes and Tohote were gods of writing and gods of communication and magic. So, beyond the mythical, we do have ancient history to look at as well. Humans have developed language. Animals all communicate. We have the ability to put it in a form, a shape, a symbol, to be able to communicate ideas over time. A bird sings, and that song is lost to the ether. But a human has learned how to, carry on and transmit knowledge and information and experience across ages. And this is a magical ability, even if you think it's a mundane one. This has great power. This is what has made our society and culture what it is. If we didn't have symbols and language to communicate, we wouldn't be where we are now, for better or worse. So some languages seem to have a little more magical oomph to them. Some magicians use Hebrew in their magical rituals because they think it has this inherent divine power being transferred from Yahweh to Moses. And because the structure and the symbols within their alphabet have color and number and meaning deeply ingrained into it. A simple letter can mean many things, and combined with other letters, you get complex meanings, then into words, which obviously have the communicated meaning, but also a deeper hidden meaning. So it's excellent for occult work. Any language that keeps a sort of pictogram form seems to have a little more inherent oomph in it, compared to, say, Latin our Latin alphabet. Doesn't seem to have as much punch in magic. And it's because we have lost that inner, deeper meaning to the symbols that they represent. Language and words shape our experience. Like I said before, they can transmit thoughts over distance, over time, but certain words can affect our psychology, our mood. We have had a huge discussion on certain words that can hurt and represent and hold, a history and an influence that can be quite destructive when uttered. So, even in mundane circles, words have power. Words have an influence, and they can influence our moods, our personalities, our future, all by what we say to ourselves and what others can say to us. So that's something to take into consideration, the long history of words being connected with subtle but yet potent influence on other people's lives, the way it can shape culture and government and religion based on the interpretation of certain symbols on a page. This is obviously something that has a profound influence, and I think it's a profound magical influence, obviously. And the same thing can be, brought up about our tool use. Tools, again, have had that magical potency. Once we started reaching into the metal age of our development, when we started forging, tools had this immense power that was considered inside of them to be able to make a sword or a hammer, or these items based on the skill of the craftsman and their history had an influence imparted into these tools. So even someone could have a lucky pin, or a tool that just works better for them than, say, something comparable, but just doesn't have that certain something inherent in the tool that just makes it a better tool. So looking at tools magically, where did they evolve in their tradition? Where did they come from? We have in Western magic, a lot of our tools are influenced from Masonic ideas, and the magical orders were kind of connected to or outgrowths of Masonic lodges. So a lot of those tools have a Masonic tradition with their symbols and their deeper meanings. And if you're trying to use those tools and you haven't been initiated or given the permission to use these tools in the right way, you're not tapping into that dynamism that's been built up over these ages. So, basic tools that, all Hermetic magic seems to be pretty confident that are needed is the Pentacle, which represents earth, the Cup, which represents water, the Sword, which, depending on the tradition, could represent air or fire, and the Wand, which, again, in certain traditions, one could be fire, one could be air. There's a fantastic debate that has long gone on about this, and I won't get into that now. I'll just say, for our purposes, we'll use the sword for air and the wand for for fire. Goodness gracious, no, don't use the wand for earth. That would be terrible. But anyway, these tools are collections of the elemental force when needed. So it's kind of like turning on a flashlight. You just grab the tool, activate it with certain words of power vibrated or certain meditations done on the object, and that activates the subtle force that has been collected in that tool, giving more power to the ritual for the magic to have a better chance to succeed. So language has a magical property in it, even in mundane uses. Tool use can have that same sort of quality. Magical languages, magical tools. All you're really doing is kind of zooming in and focusing on what words really have influence, what tools really have that special quality, that magical quality. You're digging in and trying to find out what makes the symbol potent and what doesn't. What languages have that potency and which do not. Which tools have that effective capability to implement your will, and which are faulty, which don't have that ability. Without a culture that has a magical language inherent in it, and without a tradition or magical order to guide us, we are pretty much out at open sea in terms of using our language and our alphabet in a magical way. So, what do we do in those situations? Well, thankfully, we have a magician who tackled this for us, and that is Austin Osman Spare. And he was a magician that felt that these older Masonic magical lodge traditions were insane. Not only did they not really capture the real imagination of the human within them, uh, but because they had to graph these certain symbols on their consciousness, it was like an enslavement. Um, that would drive someone insane. Now, whether I agree with Spare on that, that's a totally different subject, but I do appreciate the fact that he forged ahead on a new path that we can all take. Spare's idea was that any wish could be given a symbolic form, that to produce a magical symbol, or as he called it, a sigil. You could enshrine your desire by taking a short sentence, a basic idea that was very direct and positive affirmation. You write it out, and then you remove certain letters based on the way you wish to do it, creating a monogram, basically. Spare was an artist and a letterer, and he made monograms. So it was kind of a natural transition with his automatic drawings and his monograms that these sigils would be something he would kind of come up with. But one would take this glyph, this monogram of your short sentence, which would not suggest the desire. In other words, you didn't want to make the desire obvious in the sigil. One would just want it to have a certain aesthetic concept, or bring about a sensation of being a magical symbol, but not convey the information of what the magic was for. You wanted to bypass the conscious mind. In other words, you wanted the belief to be free and vital and dynamic, and not be filtered or censored by the conscious mind, which may have doubts or fears about the magic. So if someone was doing a spell for love, ideas and concepts that could influence the spell due to the conscious mind knowing that it's a ritual for love, would influence in a negative way if that person has doubts about their worthiness for love, or the type of person that would be best for them. So Spare wanted to get past that conscious mind and go into the pure, subtle force without any of programs in the machine that would make it run amok or not work at all. He wanted the sigil or glyph to be able to work on its own without the conscious mind's influence. So that's why the sigil needs to have just a magical appearance, but not one that suggests the quality in it. Another really interesting idea that he had was using tarot cards to build up one's magical alphabet, or alphabet of desire. So one would start using a normal pack of tarot cards, get used to them, learn them, to where they're a useful tool, a magical tool. That way, when you're familiar with, when a certain card comes up, you just know that this event is connected to that. So you're making accurate predictions. That means those symbols and your awareness have had a connection, and you have an understanding of that power behind the card. Then you want to be able to bring this into your magical alphabet by sigilizing the tarot card, and you would do that for each and every tarot card. So each tarot would have its own sigil and symbol that may or may not sort of give an idea about what the idea behind the symbol means, and you would use these as your new pack of tarot card decks. So in other words, you're bringing your tarot learning to the next level by using pure symbols connected with the symbolic ideas from those cards into these new symbols, and working with them not only to predict the future but also to influence the future, to be able to take one of these cards and meditate on it, to use concentration meditation to release the vital force, the subtle force, to influence the macrocosm according to your will. One would just concentrate on it and release it, send it out in order to affect change. And here's an interesting little tidbit. Spare talked about taking a sigil and building up this fantastic vital charge using the breath and body tension, and then all in one go, casting it out beyond the infinite horizon into the void, into magical chaos, in order to cast an effective spell. He said, doing it this way would most certainly be one of the most powerful methods of casting a sigil. Well, Barden also has, Franz Barden, Initiation Hermetics, also has a similar sort of description of magic. When he's talking about vaults, Barden said that one would draw in the electric fluid, the expansive power, and fill that with one's desire, one's imagined wish. And then one would encase that electric fluid condensation with the contractive magnetic force, making it a container, something which could be then released. But the way he describes it always connects to me with what Spare writes. He says, once the magician has determined the lifespan of their magic vault, he catapults it in an almost ecstatic fashion with the aid of his imagination into the infinite universe, into the macrocosm, into the casual world, hence into the Akasha. He mentally severs the connection with his vault as he catapults it suddenly, ceases thinking about it. He intentionally forgets the vault and directs his attention to other matters. Now, if that doesn't sound like Austin Spare's idea of launching a sigil out into the Kia in order for it to manifest through gnosis, it's almost word for word. It's incredible. So that's why I have a big appreciation for Spare and for Barden. They both have this idea of taking this concentrated, energetic desire with symbolic form and catapulting it out into the highest divine spiritual realm in order for it to come about and manifest. Going back to Spare's idea of the magical alphabet, so once you have your magical alphabet from the tarot card exercise that we just discussed, Spare described the alphabet of desire as each letter representing a sensation. So again, how many times in these videos have I described working with sensations? And that's what we're talking about, and these magical energies or forces, or the subtle force, chi, all this, it's internal sensations or experiences that you're using your focus, your concentration, and your awareness to be able to learn how to move it, to expand it, to contract it, to draw more, or to banish it. So keep that in mind when Spare's describing the alphabet of desire. Each sensation, it's a catalog of sensations. like I described in the prior video where I was talking about the different qualities all surrounding you in that egg-shaped sphere of sensation. You're working magically with these sensations. So these sigils are just representations of these sensations. So he didn't use the typical, say, fire triangle or the symbol of Venus or Taurus. He created his own symbols to describe the sensations or experiences he was having with these powers, these forces. So a few years back, I came across a funny little book. I like finding these weird little magical books written in the 60s and 70s. And one of them I found was psychosymbolism, or described psychosymbolism. And it was a magical technique where one took symbolic imagery, say an arrow flying through the sky for inspiration, or even the zodiac symbols themselves, or to stop an enemy, you imagine a hammer knocking down on an anvil. All these certain symbolic images that one would just sit and meditate on until the desire was fulfilled and the result achieved. And you would have to do this, probably several times, it mentioned. And it didn't give any instructions on sort of building up, the subtle force in order to influence it. It really didn't go into using willpower, which we'll get into very shortly in the next episode. It was just using the symbol, meditating on it for a few minutes every night until the result was achieved. And I gave it a shot. I like giving these books a try, like I mentioned. And I found that it worked. Now, of course, adding in more charge of the subtle force, or breathing exercises, or concentration, to the samadhi level, of course, would kind of give it a little more oomph. But these exercises worked for very mundane sort of things, like if you wanted a little more inspiration for a creative project, try that arrow flying through the sky symbol. Just meditate on that, and basically you're conveying to the soul, to the imagination, what you want. And as we described before, that's the way the imagination communicates, so it knows how to fulfill your desires. It knows how to start to influence you in order to get what you want. I wouldn't say this would, help you win the lottery, this technique of psychosymbolism, but, show me so many techniques that do help you win the lottery, and then we'll talk. So I really found that book interesting, and I thought, it would be a useful sort of reference as we talk about how symbols and glyphs and sigils all have this magical influence. I wanted to give a few different ways you can either create sigils or work with them, these magical little squiggly glyphs. One of them is to meditate on a particular quality that you like, let's say vitality. And you would fill your awareness, all your experience, as if you were supercharged with this vital force. You're just full of life and energy and go get it kind of attitude. So you want to sit with that sensation, that these different qualities within you that make you believe that you are filled with this vitality. You want to reach a peak experience with it. Then from that experience, sort of map out how the energy or sensations felt in your body and make a shorthand for it. Just a quick little squiggly, just to, be a shorthand reminder of what the energy felt like. That way you can recall it at any time just by looking at it. You go, oh, okay, well, this is my vitality sigil, and I just have to imagine or recreate the experience that's illustrated right here. So very useful for an alphabet of desire, or any of the qualities, say, of the planets or elements. You can use this technique to better understand the energetic feel and structure of these qualities. Of course, to produce any sort of magical effect on the world at large, you're going to have to project these sigils or these energies outside of your sphere of sensation. So you can, if you're working for yourself, build up through the life force center, a powerful charge drawing up from the earth and the elements around you, and then bringing it up to the heart center, filling up the connected with all the different forces and powers and beings and everything that you're connected with, drawing that power in with the life force energy that you've drawn up, and then finally projecting it outwards, as we discussed with Spare and Barden, outside of the sphere of sensation. And you concentrate this ray of willpower and imagination outside onto the subtle force, and you sort of burn it into it. You just actively imagining that symbol or that shape out in the subtle force, just burning a hole in it. So that's the active phase. Once you have that, sensation that the sigil has clicked or sticks, or that it's active and vital, then you want to pull back from being so actively, Goku blasting, the chi power out. You want to tone it down, and you want to become aware. So you allow your imagination and the subtle force to work. You passively perceive what the energy is now doing. So, you watch it, you watch the sigil, it may begin to move and change shapes and colors. You want to allow it to do it. You want to see what you have manifested so far. Take a step back and look at your art in process and see what needs to be changed. Is it not powerful enough? Is it not brilliant enough? Or does it stay small and it's not really moving? Or does it just fade away? You want to make sure you put your demands into it. How long is it supposed to last? What are the effects that you wish to achieve? What do you want to experience? Shape it, mold it like a potter working with clay on his wheel. And once everything aligns, once it's good and charged where you think you have it where you want it, then once again you step back, you look at it, you make sure if everything's perfect. That's when you project it out and fire and forget. Both Barden with his vault and Spare with his sigil, having that ecstatic, absent-minded release. That way you sever the connection. You don't draw that energy back to you to where it can't manifest. You will allow it to work on the macrocosm. Technique or exercise one can do with sigils is to sigilize an experience, as I mentioned just a moment ago, and then take that sigil and transmute it into the desired equivalent quality that you want to have, that you would like. So for this example, we'll take, say, sadness, and what does that energy feel like within you? What sensation does it give? And map that out to where you have an image that conveys that sadness. Then you begin the transmutation process. Maybe flip it upside down and make it a little more whimsical or beautiful. That way you can kind of transmute it into something else, maybe emotional strength, and sit there and work with that new image as if that would be the energetic sensation you'd be experiencing. Make that fill your sphere of sensation, fill your awareness, and the sense of presence and potency there within you. And that way you can better take on these qualities, drink in these qualities, and soak them into your being, your spirit sensation. So you wouldn't let this go. You wouldn't project it out. You would just keep it because you want these qualities to be absorbed into your being. So with that said, let's take a look at some other ideas and concepts with magical alphabets. Going back to Barden, though, his Key to the True Kabbalah is a fantastic book about working with magical alphabets. Especially with the magical sensations all working together in a type of synthesia of experience. In other words, visually you're seeing a color or shape, and sound-wise you're hearing a sound being vibrated, and certain qualities of sensation of body like heaviness or lightness or warmth or coldness. All these qualities taken in with the symbolic aspect of the color and the sound and everything else, that have been built up over time and training to where, it has a much more potent, direct influence on the subtle force, using all of your senses to, shape and influence the subtle force is much more potent than, say, just a sound or just a image. Bringing all the senses together to really transform your reality and your experience. So with Barden's Key to the True Kabbalah, it just like all of Barden's other works, it was influenced by some other works and his own ideas and inspirations. And you don't have to lock in to that particular view of a magical alphabet. You can take what works from it and build your own. I did something very similar. I have my own sets of magical alphabets, but one of them is very connected to Barden's Key to the True Kabbalah. I find it very useful and very potent. So crafting magical tools, if you look at the old grimoires, always come with precise instructions, the perfect type of wood that has to be cut at a certain time of day with a certain type of tool, the process of cleaning it and taking care of it, the prayers that need to be said over it, any sort of incense burned or timing of the day. All of these, of course, are to maximize the symbolic import of the tool. It's influencing the subtle force around the tool, charging it, and giving it a magical life by doing all these activities as prescribed. These are not random instructions. These ancient tomes were designed to set up contact with intelligent forces and beings beyond our sphere, and the way that you had to tune in to the right frequency is by following these instructions. So if you want to work with a certain group of spirits in the future, or do certain types of rituals, believe them when they tell you how to work this certain way. You'll probably find, as most magicians, once they get the experience, that yes, you have all these tools and these rituals that you have to perform, but then once you have contact established with these intelligences and spirits, you'll start to get easier, more perfect ways of working with that group of spirits. This is sort of the initiation. You have to go through these processes to both transform your consciousness and your personal sphere of sensation and the subtle force within you in order to be able to connect with these beings and spirits properly. So they're precise instructions. Follow them when crafting magical tools. I see so many people not doing it and properly. They don't make the tools right, or they use these substitutions that really don't have the same symbolic aesthetic principles behind them. It's just all random, and they wonder why the ritual doesn't work, or if it does work, it's not quite right, or maybe the spirit didn't manifest. It's because you didn't tune into the right frequency. You didn't make the proper transformations within yourself and in the tool to be able to do the ritual. See by now that it looks like either you have to sort of pick a tradition and use their tools, or you just have to sort of go out and do it on your own. And that's part of the appeal of chaos magic for many people, and beginning to study new practices and new magical perspectives is a big part of that, and trying to learn, what works and what doesn't in magic. Part of the reason why I have written my blogs and made these videos is trying to help people that don't have a tradition, magical tradition, or a culture that has magic in it that they can go to and are kind of out there on their own. And, a lot of them fall into Barden, thankfully, because it's a great system to work with. But it does have its difficulties. And, the other part is those that get into Spare. Austin Spare, he has such dense material that it's tough to get out some of the meaning. And he purposely tried to hide some of that meaning. So it makes it difficult to go out on your own. So that's why I try to help out with this material. So, if you're going out on your own, basically you're an artist, you're a creator, and it's your magical system, your alphabet of desire. It's your way of experiencing the world and how you want to experience it. You don't need some old dusty tradition. It does have its power. It does work. It has its uses, and the people that are brought up in them can effectively work magic. There's no doubt about that. But if joining isn't really your thing, then you kind of have to go out on your own and make your magic. What forces are you drawing to you or expelling away from you based on the symbols or your daily rituals, the color of the clothes you wear, to how you paint your house? What things in your daily life are drawing certain qualities of the subtle force to you in ways that you want and don't want? What power items do you currently have? Some, to a complete stranger, it's just some normal object, but to you, it's infused with meaning, emotion, and has qualities that are so condensed around the object that just looking at it or touching it evokes powerful sensations within you. Now that you're aware of this power, look around you and see the potent symbols that are everywhere. Special green ink on special parchment, blessed and sanctioned by specially trained masters, that draws the quality of value from the ether, and confounding the power that it has on this material world just blows my mind. It's just little pieces of paper with ink on it, but we'll kill for it. How certain monograms or corporate logos bind people's minds and hearts and make them consume their sacraments. Take a look around, take a walk around the world, and look at everyone staring into these magic mirrors reflecting symbols and imagery that draws in our attention and therefore our life force. What's being drawn out of you? What world are you manifesting? What world would you choose to manifest if you could? What symbols would you use to manifest that world? And what tools would you need in order to do that? Thanks again so much for joining me for another episode. I hope that I've given you a proper introduction, illustration, and illumination of magical scripts and magical alphabets, ritual tools, and how to work with them and charge them. The ubiquitous yet subtle influence symbols have on us has long been studied, improved, and perfected. Our culture has forgotten its magical roots and has sacrificed the subtle force and the power that they could wield with it to materialist obsessions. And we're starting to awaken from all this and learn that spells have been cast but can be broken. New beliefs can be formed. New imaginings and new dreams can be brought forth if we have the will to do it. No book recommendation this time, but I will leave you a quote from Aleister Crowley. He said, "It is extraordinary how the formula of Hermes Trismegistus holds throughout. Magic is but the extension of the microcosm into the macrocosm. And as the macrocosm is greater, it follows that one does magic by attuning oneself with the infinite." Join me next time as we walk through the process of performing a ritual. Just a basic practice that one can do to affect change in accordance with the will. Until then, I'm Justin B., and this was episode 7 of Intro into Magic, and I wish you good magic.